Right, guys, thanks for joining us. I've got Wajji on the line with me. He goes by the name of Intensity on the PlayStation Network, and today we'll be talking about the best games on the current generation consoles on our road to E3. We've got some brilliant new games, pending announcements to come at E3. But before then, we're going to talk about the best games to play on the current generation consoles. Wajji, take it away.
Right. Well, there's been a lot of great games out this generation. To start off, Ali, I'd like to ask you, what were some of your favorite games this gen?
Like if you're actually talking about my two or three of my favorite games, like entirely favorite games of this gen, regardless of platform, I'd say two games come to mind straight away. One is Red Dead Redemption. I absolutely love that game. I don't think I've spent more time with the game this console generation than that. Yeah, maybe Skyrim. I platinum Skyrim, so I spent quite a lot of time on it. But I loved Red Dead Redemption. The atmosphere in that game, it was just an absolutely fantastic game. The multiplayer components and the entire storyline, the setting, the Western setting, it was absolutely fantastic. And another game that actually comes to mind is one I've played recently, BioShock Infinite, which I think has to be one of the best games this generation. If you talk about a game as a work of art, that game is it. So, what about you?
Well, I mean, the one that comes to mind is the first Gears of War for myself. I think there's been a lot of games on the 360, but that was one that really captured my imagination because the first time I saw that game, I was just blown away by how original it looked, the design, the gameplay. There was nothing like it on any of the consoles at that point. So I loved the first Gears of War. I think the sequels were good, but there was something about the first one for me that still, holds a special place. Um, Secondly, I'd probably say Metal Gear 4. It's just because it is such a bizarre game. It's just Kojima at his best and what he's done with the Metal Gear Legacy. And he's just, finished off and, wound it up with a nice little bow. But obviously, we all thought it was the end of the Metal Gear series. Apparently, it's not. So, obviously, I think E3 might be another place to look out for some new announcements for Metal Gear 5. And
And I think, for the first Gears of War, it defined an entire genre. Like, it gave birth to so many games that had the third person shooter mechanic.
oh yeah, there was loads of copycats, and I think this was the problem that Sony had initially when they there was loads of games that tried to copy the style of Gears of War, the whole the cover-based shooter system that they brought in was by far the best. The first Uncharted nearly got there, but I think it was the sequels that actually did the job. But yeah, for me, it was the first Gears of War that actually spawned this cover shooter genre.
I mean, if we will be talking about the best games this console generation, I think we have to mention one of the Uncharted games. And for me, and I think me and you differ on this one, for me, the best game in the series has been the third one. I absolutely love the third one. It was absolutely fantastic, and I know that you like the second one more.
I prefer the second one. I think there was something about the second one that still, for me, there was just the right balance in the second one. I think the second one had great peaks and troughs, as you'd like to call it. I think it there was big cinematic moments and there's nice quieter moments in that game that made it feel like a more rounded movie-like experience for myself. I think the third one was great, don't get me wrong, but I think it lacked a bit of polish that the second one had.
Yeah, sure, sure. I think I like the third one more because it was a relentless, blockbuster, right? Like you mentioned, the second one had a few quieter moments, especially when you actually go to if I'm wrong, correct me here, where you actually go to Tibet. Is it Tibet?
That's the second one, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So when you actually go to Tibet, you've got like three, four chapters in the middle that are just like quiet platforming, exploration kind of levels. Fantastic stuff. But and the third one doesn't have as many levels like that, but it was just such a relentless game. The set pieces in that game. I mean the the set piece in the plane where cargo's actually flying out and you're actually flying out with it. Absolutely, absolutely immaculate.
No, without a shadow of a doubt, Naughty Dog, you can't say the second or the third. There's very little to differentiate between the two in terms of quality. Yeah, but I mean, it comes down to just like I preferred the quieter moments in the second one compared to the quieter moments they tried in the third one. But yeah, there was incredible set pieces in the third one. The plane sequence, the desert sequence, where he's walking in the desert, you know. So yeah, there's quite a few sequences that are really memorable in the third one as well.
Yeah, what about like other games, like the recent Tomb Raider? What did you actually think of that?
I thought it was good, but I don't think it was spectacular. I think it copied a lot of games. It copied Gears of War. It copied Uncharted. Obviously, it was the first sort of game that delved into going to tombs and discovering treasure and all that, you know. But I think it's playing catch up now. I think the last 4 or 5 years haven't been kind to that franchise. But having said that, I think it's a great reboot and it's a great direction that they've gone in now.
Right, another series that people have actually said that, it's actually bookended the start and the finish of this console generation has been the BioShock series. The first BioShock, which came out in 2007, which many people actually claim to have announced the arrival of the current generation consoles, and the new one that's actually just come out, BioShock Infinite, which has come out towards the tail end of this current generation. Both fantastic games. What I have to say, like, if you haven't played BioShock Infinite, like, people actually need to play it.
I personally haven't played the third one yet, so I've heard great things about it, but I loved the first one. I mean, the second one was a bit of a letdown, in all honesty.
Yeah, it was made by BioWare. It wasn't made by Irrational Games or Ken Levine, but like the first and the third one, Bioshock Infinite. Like if you play a game for its story, then you have to play that game. I mean, the twists and turns, especially the ending just blows your mind. And I don't think there would be anyone out there who would have actually understood the ending without actually going onto the internet to read forums and explanation notes and like what people have actually had to say about that. What about the God of War games? Like in the last console generation, in the PS2 generation, the first two God of War games. Like if you talk about the best games of the last generation, like one of the first two God of War games, yeah, would definitely be up there. But what about the series and what kind of turn it's actually taken on the current generation platforms?
I think God of War games, they're fantastic. They are really great games to play, and for what they are, they're just, you know, very vicious, in your face sort of action games. But the problem I have with the God of War games is, as great as they are, they feel very last gen. I don't think that as games they've really changed much. I mean, if you pick up the first God of War and then play the third one, essentially the difference is graphics and set pieces. But exactly. So I mean, for me, that's been a bit of an issue with the God of War games. But otherwise, you know, they're great games. Don't get me wrong. But I think, you know, what Santa Monica Studio did was sort of take on the mantra of don't fix what's not broken sort of gameplay. And you know, they've not really brought in anything new. That's the only issue I have.
All right. What about Heavy Rain? Heavy Rain, as far as PlayStation exclusives are concerned, and there's a new one coming out from Quantic Dreams, the company that actually made that game later on this year. So, what about Heavy Rain? That blew people's minds when it came out in 2010.
I think Heavy Rain was a very very important game to come out this gen. I think what that game did was actually show other developers that you could make a mature game, you could make a game that wasn't just shooting hundreds of, enemies down, and you could have a sensible story and, real life decisions in a game that would change the outcome of the game. Because I think it had something like 16 different endings, if I'm correct.
Yeah, there were loads of different endings, and they were all quite varied and different as well. And I think Beyond Two Souls, new game coming out from the same studio that brought you Heavy Rains, should be an absolutely amazing title coming out in October for the PlayStation 3. What about games on the 360? Because as far as exclusives are concerned, like we all know that there were more exclusives out on the PlayStation, and I think a lot of people would actually say that's not entirely a good thing because the limited number of exclusives that the Xbox 360 had, they sold many, many more copies, and I think a large number of the PS3 exclusives combined. Did you?
Well, I mean, the Halo franchise obviously has a bit of a holding. I personally am not a huge fan of the Halo franchise. I've never really liked the character of Master Chief, but I can see a lot of people who play those games and love the multiplayer for that. So, I mean, obviously that's an important franchise for Microsoft. Obviously, you've got another series that they've started up, which took an age to come out, was Alan Wake, and I thought that was a really, really good game, and I'm just interested to see what they do with that franchise now.
We haven't mentioned many sports games. I think, as far as sports are concerned, if you're a basketball fan, the NBA 2K series was really, really good. Yeah, and I think the best one was definitely NBA 2K11, the one with Michael Jordan on the cover. Amazing game.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing is, obviously killed the live series, didn't it? I mean, that's how good it was. Live didn't even sell basically, and that's why EA just went, you know what, let's just give up on live, and they've had to obviously rethink the whole strategy with the basketball franchise.
Absolutely. And as far as FIFA games are concerned, I think the FIFA 13, the one that's out currently, has been the best installments of FIFA
Again, this was a franchise that was horrible in the last.
generation. Yeah, because they had a big beating from Pro Evolution Soccer.
Pro Evo, yeah, and now it's like the tides have turned. It's like it's incredible, like how EA have bought it back, and the amount of talent that's gone into changing the franchise is incredible.
Right, fantastic stuff. One series I think people should definitely play should be the Call of Duty series. But as far as I'm concerned, the best Call of Duty was Call of Duty Modern Warfare, which came out in 2007. Yeah, for some strange reasons, all the follow-ups have actually not held on to me in this. But the first one, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2007, which actually started this whole juggernaut of Call of Duty that Activision, yeah.
Yeah, I think they changed. They did change the big mega franchise aspect of the games. Normally it was just your GTA coming out every 3 4 years. What they've done is they've annualized the action game. And
So yeah, I think Battlefield 3. What about Battlefield 3? Because I know that you actually liked it more than Call of Duty.
oh yeah, I mean, without a shadow of a doubt, as much as I loved the first Call of Duty, I think the sequels never really went on to innovate as much as that was expected of the franchise, basically. For me, Battlefield 3, what it did was it took the formula from Call of Duty, the whole team-based gameplay, but it actually put in mechanics where you could actually play as a proper team, where one member was valuable instead of just running around the corner and shooting everyone. And obviously everyone's on a different skill set. I had people on my team that were not great shooters, but were great team players. They would help out being a medic or an engineer. So I loved that aspect of it. And I think you might recall a few games that we played together, where there was different people with different skill sets. I mean, I think I was sort of the assault guy. You were the medic. We had a few guys that were recon. One of them guys was an engineer. And when you worked as a team, it felt so rewarding. It was absolutely brilliant when it worked. But yeah, I mean, yeah, for me that was a game changer for me from the multiplayer aspect.
So would you say like Mr. Best multiplayer game this generation?
That's a hard one. I mean, for me personally, yeah, I would say it is for me. Um, there's a lot of stuff that they did really well in that. Obviously, there's always room for improvement, but I loved it. I think that's the most I've ever played a multiplayer game.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I think for me it's actually a toss up between Gears of War or Battlefield 3 because Gears of War actually brings together the team element of stuff, rather than Call of Duty where you're just running around and like killing people randomly. Gears of War, you were forced to talk to your team, you were forced to actually plan out how you're gonna actually approach a particular round. You had to be communicating, coordinating, and that is what led to a team's success. And that is something that Battlefield 3 did absolutely fantastically. I think if you had a nice group like with four players who had varying styles, you could get really really far in that game.
Yeah, I mean, the other aspect I want to just touch upon was the battle log system that they had. Where you can go online. I think Call of Duty introduced Elite. That was a paid service, whereas Battlelog was sort of like a Facebook page where you could go in, check your stats, check your friends' stats, and sort of improve your game. And I loved that, and I loved that aspect of it where you can sort of keep looking at your stats and go, right, I think I'm a better assault guy or I'm a better medic. So you start concentrating on the exactly.
Yeah, what you're doing well and what you're not doing well. Basically, all the stats are there, and you can actually improve on your game or improvise, or actually take the stats, take the numbers, and actually build them into your daily game. So yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. So, going up to E3 and the launch of the next generation consoles, if there are certain games that people actually need to play, just name five games right at the top of your head, like five games that people should play before they actually sell off their current generation consoles or actually put them away in time for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One.
Okay, no particular order. I think Metal Gear 4 is definitely up there. I think Kojima, as weird as he is with his storylines, and it's a Marmite game. A lot of people didn't like the fact that I had a lot of cutscenes, but I did. I thought you got a lot of story for the game that you were playing, and it tied up very nicely all the aspects of the previous games. I know there's obviously E3s are around the corner, and they're going to probably announce they've already announced Metal Gear 5, and we're going to obviously see more details of the story. But I just loved the whole, where it went with Snake's story and how he was growing old and all the things from the past coming to haunt him, basically. So, yeah, Metal Gear 4 is definitely in my top five. Second on the list would be Heavy Rain. Again, primarily due to, it not being just a normal third-person shooter game or a game that you're just running around and sort of just getting objectives. It was a very story-driven game where you had four characters, and if one of the characters died, it wasn't that the story ended. The scenario completely changed, but the story was always there. So that was a very interesting concept, and it was done quite well. Um, Third on my list was Gears of War. Again, I think with Gears of War, I mean, don't get me wrong, the sequels were great, but the first one, there was something about the first one that I just loved. It was genre defining, and when you played it for the first time, level designs, the art style, the levels, it was just incredible. I loved it. The characters were great. There's a lot of you'd be walking in the stage, and you'd have a lot of banter between the characters, and I loved that. I loved that they introduced that into a lot of games as well. So, um, yeah, number four for me would be Uncharted 2. Again, we've had this discussion whether Uncharted 3 or Uncharted 2, but my personal opinion is I liked Uncharted 2. I liked the deliberate pacing. I liked the slower moments in this, and then obviously had the blockbuster chase scenes and the incredible set pieces. So yeah, Uncharted 2, and obviously the voice acting in Uncharted 2 was absolutely amazing as well. And then last but not least, the one we've already mentioned, Battlefield 3. I think for me, it was personally the best multiplayer game I've played this gen.
Yeah, that's a fantastic list of games. Five great games. I'll actually quickly round up my top five as well. Number five, Skyrim, huge game. Although it had huge problems on some of the console versions, especially the PS3, but the amount of the amount of hours that you can actually get out of that game, absolutely fantastic. Huge open world, and if you've got dragons flying around on your screen, and you've got to kill them, how can you not like that game? Fantastic game. So that's number five. Number four, Uncharted 3. Everything that you mentioned about Uncharted 2, I'd repeat that with Uncharted 3. I thought it was better than Uncharted 2. And number three, again, you've already mentioned this, Gears of War, so I agree with everything that you've actually said, so I'm not going to repeat a lot of that stuff. I think you got it spot on there. Number two for me was BioShock Infinite. I think we've talked about this earlier on in the podcast. I think for me it was one of the most exhilarating gaming experiences that I've actually had this generation, and that ending completely blew my mind. And I think the best game for me this generation, this is guys, this is our personal point of views, is Red Dead Redemption. I think for me, if it takes a lot, from a game for me to actually say that this is a better open world game than GTA. And that game basically had spades load of content. If you I platinum that game, and if you actually went for the platinum, the amount of hours that you actually got out of that game, and you never once were bored.
Yeah, it was a very very long game, and yeah, I think that is one of the genre defining games as well. I mean, GTA 4 was brilliant for when it came out, but it didn't. I don't think it aged as well. Whereas I think what they did with Red Dead was it was just the way they revolutionized the whole Western. You know, they brought it to life. You're riding horses, you're riding different types of horses. So yeah, there was immense amount of detail in that game.
Right, fantastic stuff, fantastic stuff. Right, Vajji, thanks a lot. What we'll be doing next is that we'll be actually talking about what games we've got coming out for the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 in the coming months before the next generation of consoles launch. So look out for that. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for joining us.